There's a strange social crime in India. It has no legal section, you can't file a police case or drag the accused to a courtroom. Yet, it's treated as a bigger crime than peeing in public or even eve-teasing. The crime is simple. You speak clearly, you think critically, you show competence without apology. And suddenly, you are arrogant and you lack respect. You might have heard this before. India has a confidence problem. I disagree. In reality, India has a confidence intolerance problem. Look around you. Pay attention, especially your parents' generation. The moment they say someone comfortable in their own skin, something burns inside them. Unless you are walking on eggshells around them or feeling guilty for your own existence, you are not being respectful enough. Because in India, confidence without visible suffering is extremely offensive. If you are an introvert, you are weak and dumb. If you are well articulate, you talk too much. If you fail, you are a disappointment. And if you are successful, well, the credit goes to them. If you resist, you must have forgotten your values. And the smart shaming starts quite early. Let me ask you something. When people in India say someone is a good kid, what do they actually mean? Usually, they mean someone who listens without arguing, someone who doesn't question too much, someone who studies well and doesn't create trouble at home. In short, they look like a good investment instead of an independent individual with their own agency. And over time, this arrangement becomes convenient for everyone. Parents love it because they get to play God and their authority is never questioned. And the child feels safe because as long as they just do what they're told, they're not burdened with anything unpredictable. What begins as discipline slowly turns into intrusive dependence. They never learn how to make independent decisions because it was never allowed. And what happens when these kids finally go out in the real world? They soon realize that if you let people walk all over you, they will happily oblige. It doesn't matter whether it's your partner, friends, colleagues, or boss, because the world doesn't reward blind adjustment. On the other hand, if a kid shows signs of intelligence, like asking questions, doing things on their own way, or calling things out when someone's teaching doesn't match their own actions, we tag them as problem children. And it's not just your home. You are also being handed over to an education system that is actively offended by your intelligence. If you remember, back in the day, if you had questions outside your syllabus or even solved an equation using a different formula than what they taught you, their ego would get hurt, even if the answer was right. They don't say it out loud, but the message is clear. Being right is secondary to being compliant. The truth is that most of them don't want you to fail. They want you to get good grades. But again, they can't stand the idea of a mere teenager being smarter than them. So you're stuck in a system where the teachers feel personally challenged by the very concept of curiosity. And there's a very good reason why it's not going to change anytime soon. If you zoom out a bit, you will see the bigger picture. Everyone benefits from a generation that stays in line and doesn't ask questions. Be it the government, big corporations, or the algorithm. You're just easier to exploit that way. And it's not just a top-down thing. You feel it among the general public too. In school, students would hate you if you get good grades. And now, your friends, colleagues, or even your own family members feel offended if you climb the ladder too fast. It's almost like you're betraying them by chasing excellence. In other words, crab mentality. But you can't let them keep you average. Because life doesn't follow a syllabus. And you can go only so far by following instructions. If you want to do well, you need to learn how to solve complex problems using the least amount of resources possible. And to do so, you need to protect your critical thinking from the relentless smart shaming in India. Here's how to protect yourself from the average. First, you need to understand what the real problem is. The thing is that Indian parents often inherit a lot of anxiety. So, they do their best to pass on their learned scarcity mindset onto you through fear-based prediction, exaggerated consequences, and emotional reactions to non-threatening situations. When the stress is always high, the person who knows better is always in charge because they have been around longer than you. So even if the intention is protection, the outcome is dependency. And the problem is, if someone grows up reacting to constant urgency, they don't get enough space to assess situations calmly, trust their own judgment, or learn things the hard way. So later in life, they either become too afraid to the real world or suddenly rebellious and careless. And that's not how you win the situation. The smartest people you know are already doing this. They practice a combination of metacognition and calibrated self-assessment. Metacognition is simply the ability to notice how your own mind is working while it's working. So, in any given situation, your default response is to watch your thoughts and emotions instead of getting completely carried away by them. So, instead of just thinking, you are aware of what you're feeling and why. Calibrated self-assessment, on the other hand, is when you can accurately estimate your own performance or abilities in reference to external outcomes. Basically, it's a state of perception in which you can look at yourself without flattering or insulting yourself. When you master them both, you turn your validation system inwards. Instead of seeking for approval from people who either don't want to or can't understand your line of thinking. In cases where many intelligent young Indians abandon their way of thinking and settle for a by-the-book mediocre life despite having no immediate financial pressure, they do it because they were never taught these two things. At least now, you know, right? If it was helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe. Don't share this video with your parents. I'll just leave it with that, and thanks for watching.